I just want you to know, I don't know what it is about you. I feel like I've known you forever. I'm going to add you to the prayer list. And I see and feel good things for you, and I don't think you're going to be leaving us anytime soon. You can't. You've got a wonderful show. You've got a lot of fans, and we don't want to, hear about you leaving before your time. Although I will say, I'll be a little jealous when that day comes because I'll know you're in a much, much better place, and we will reunite one day.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you, it's going to be at least 120 before that happens. That's my thing. But, I got to go back to when you were 10 years old. And, James, are you still out there on the line?
Yes, I'm here. How you doing, Shawn?
Hey, James.
When you were 10 years old, you said you went on your first going and doing a case on the paranormal somewhere, ghost hunting. Was it in a house, or was it what type of situation was it?
Well, I didn't know I was going on a case. My sisters were in college, and they were renting a home. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, The Burbs, but it was in a relatively newer neighborhood at the time. But there was this old Victorian mansion-looking home from like the previous neighborhood that they, for whatever reason, didn't tear down, and it was like a sore thumb and out of place in this one neighborhood. But my sisters got it dirt cheap, and they were hardcore flower children during the hippie era. So they rented the home out with several other college students and friends of theirs, and they knew it was haunted, but they didn't tell me, and they were babysitting me one night because my parents went out, and I went over there to spend the night. And my sister, my second younger sister, didn't divulge that information to me till I got there, that there was a ghost there, or I probably, to be honest with you, wouldn't have gone. So now it's too late. I'm there for the night. My parents are out. I'm with my sisters at their home. And so I had no choice. It was just there. I had to deal with it. And like I said, having that gift, they always seem to gravitate towards me. So when I saw this apparition, I was extremely frightened. She came down, a girl, I didn't even know it was a ghost. She looked that real, but I was in a sleeping bag on the living room floor next to the fireplace. And she came dancing down the stairs and continued to dance across the living room. There wasn't even any music playing. But I thought it was one of my friend's hippie friends until she looked at me, stopped, then continued to dance and right into the fireplace and vanished. Well, I launched out of my sleeping bag and ran upstairs and jumped into bed with my sister.
I would have.
Yeah, but the next day I was encouraged to reach out to that spirit because they said that, she had manifested to very few people. And so I asked her, what the issue was, and she turned out to be a girl that died of an overdose in that home. And I guess in my, as naive towards that whole thing that I was, just out of the mouth of babes, whatever I said to her resonated, and it helped her go to the light and cross over. And so from that time on, I was on my path.
Now, James, you got any questions you want to ask Shawn?
Yeah, you do a lot of demonic cases, I'm sure. Have you noticed an increase in them? And whenever you go on these cases, say a house blessing or whatever, do you also notice a fallout in your own home or your own life afterwards?
That is a remarkable question, and everything you said, it's like you already know the answer to. You've hit the nail. You've hit the head of the nail on every single one. It's unbelievable, and that's how I knew I was meant to do this, because I don't think I really ran into my first demonic case till after my wife and I got married, started GhostBeGone.biz, and we started working cases. And then since that time, that's all that seems to come across my desk now. But oddly enough, days before my phone will ring, I will start having some odd activity here. I refer to them as demonic drive-bys. A lot of people in the field refer to them as recon blasts, but I will start experiencing some odd things around the house here. And sure enough, I know my phone's going to be ringing any day with another case. And lo and behold, it does. And there's just a lot of things I do ahead of time to prepare. I make sure that the family takes their children to a babysitter or drop them off at a neighbor or another friend of the family that lives somewhere else for the night. If they have dogs, if they have outdoor cats, leave them alone. But if they have dogs, to send them also to a neighbor to watch for a few hours, or perhaps kennel them at a vet for overnight or something. Because one thing I don't do is religious provocation, but I have found that just my very presence at these homes, if there's definitely a malevolent entity there, that just my presence is provocation enough, and they always lash out at the children and the animals first. But that's probably 5 stages in. I mean, it can be frustrating for the client that calls me because I ask them to fill out an intake form first. That can take several hours with everybody in the home as a family unit getting together and filling out this form, then sending it back to me. Then my wife and I reviewing the form, discussing, and then my wife usually calls and has a over-the-phone interview, which is usually the second one. I've already called them initially and had an initial telephone interview. Then we determine if we need to go there in person or not. And if we decide we need to go there in person, we make all those arrangements ahead of time. And we try to be as inconspicuous as possible. It's just my wife and I that show up, an older couple. You know, we take the Ghost Be Gone magnets off the car as not to embarrass them or alert their neighbors that they're having some type of issues. But it's never a one and done. The visits can be many visits there over a period of time before we finally are able to bring some type of closure to the situation. But my approach is very spiritual. There's some religious overtone to my approach, and there's many things that the people are required to do to help me help them. So just as many people as I do help, I have probably 5 times that amount that I have to refer to other teams or just, cut them loose because they're just not at that point yet to do the types of things that I need them to do to help them. And so that can be very frustrating to have to cut people loose. But if they aren't ready to buy all in, then it just makes things so much worse. And I don't want that to happen either.
Yeah, now, and do you follow up, like a little bit of counseling and leave some prayers or some kind of information how they can help themselves also afterwards?
Oh, absolutely. They witness me. They go through everything with me. They witness me go through the home and do a complete property and house blessing and cleansing and seal the property up. And they've been left with instructions on how to continue to do that and how often they should do it, and that they're going to continue to be in a battle for the rest of their lives, and just to draw their line in the sand and make a stand and, continue to fight as long as it takes. Because if they reopen a door or they, drop their guard and stop fighting for a little while, these things come back in, and they come back much, much stronger and much more violent. And then it makes me helping them almost virtually impossible. So I leave them with all of that instruction. And I'm happy to say that they know my number, my personal email address. They know where I live. And they all know that I expect to continue to hear from them, forever until I move on from this path and this journey that I'm on. I expect to hear from them all the time. I never cut off communications. Once we've gone through something like that together, I never cut off that communication with them.
Now, I got to ask you, Shawn, there is a lot of groups out there go ghost hunting. They go through and supposedly get rid of the ghosts for the people. Some of them, actually even charge a lot of money. And I even had a group, it came on my show back here about a year ago. And I asked them, what do you do? And they said, we go into their house and we cleanse their house and all this. And I said, well, how many cases have you done? And they said, well, I think we're on our third case, which really, put red flags up in the air to me. Have you ran into where the people at one point decided to call anybody to get help and they called the wrong type of people and it made it worse?
You, James, and I somehow have a little bit of a psychic connection going on here, because I almost know exactly what you're going to ask right before you ask it. And this is, brothers and sisters out there listening, we didn't script this, but that was exactly my thought. And then you brought that question aboard. And it just reminds me of something that I'm experiencing a lot now, which I'm referring to as attention seekers. Not to say that an attention seeker that reaches out to me doesn't truly have an issue. And I'm thinking of one case in particular where this woman was definitely being haunted, and probably being haunted by something a little darker, a little more malevolent than Uncle Tom or Aunt Bee, that are just lingering around because they want to watch over the family, or love the home too much, or thought that they, their life was cut too short too soon and they're not ready to cross over yet. Something worse than that. And so she reached out to me first, and we were probably on the phone for 3 or 4 hours, and then I remember reaching out to her in the middle of the night, about 3:30 in the morning, when she told me that's when things were worst. And I emailed her a bunch of prayers to have handy, because she didn't know prayer one. She was baptized Catholic, claims that at a very young age she realized Catholicism was weird and not for her, so she left the church. She believed in a higher power of some sort, but not necessarily a God. Didn't believe in anything bad as a yin to the yang of the higher power, although she was experiencing this situation. She was almost in denial that she was actually going through it, but not enough to not reach out to me. But something about our interview rubbed her the wrong way, and that's heartbreaking too for me, because I'm not a counselor. I try to do my best to help, and maybe I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. I wish I could be everybody's cup of tea. Unfortunately, that's not reality. But something about me rubbed her wrong. She decided not to use my help. She turned around and she had probably a half a dozen or so other paranormal teams come in the home, teams just like you just described, and they all made things way worse. Way worse. Till when she finally turned back around, came full circle, and reached back out to me again, it was dire. She was in dire straits. Now, this next part doesn't even make sense to me to explain it, and I can't even explain it. She still wasn't able to buy in 100% to what I was selling, and I wasn't selling anything money-wise. I didn't want a dime from her. I don't charge for my ministry work, but she wasn't buying into what I needed her to do for me to help her out of this situation. So I just ultimately had to put my feelers out and try and find a team or a couple of teams that I thought would be able to help her, that really truly understood what she was going through. And I had to cut her loose. And then I became a target of attack from her and a lot of her friends, that I wasn't being a Christian, and I was a fraud, and I didn't know what I was doing, and that's why I was avoiding coming over and helping her. And that was okay. I have thick skin. It doesn't bother me what people say or think about me, but what bothered me was I knew what was there, and I knew that I could help, but she wasn't willing to help me help her, and that was a really, really hard thing to do. But my advice to people out there, you shouldn't have to. This isn't a proven science. I hear the term pseudoscience all the time. Okay, that's an okay term, but it's not a proven science. None of us can. There's no experts out there. None of us know it all. don't pay any money to anybody. I see these guys now on YouTube advertising exorcisms over the phone for $5,000, and I'm sure